Yeah, no.
I'm going to dance.
Yeah.
When we are going to dance. We are going to dance.
Hey everybody, Alex Newman coming to you live one last time from Jekyll Island. We're at the Red Pill Expo, almost the end of the day. G. Edward Griffin is about to go on stage and give his concluding talk. And we have one more guest for you before we go. We just talked to Christian Westbrook, the Ice Age farmer, and he talked about this war on food producers, farmers, and ranchers. And as luck would have it, if you believe in those things, we have with us a rancher. I'm with Nathan Descheemaeker. He is a Montana rancher. He raises cattle, and he has been on the front lines of some of this. Nathan, thank you very much for being with us.
Yep, for sure.
So tell us a little bit about what's going on in Montana. They're trying to take away all the grazing lands and put it into a big reserve. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, American Prairie Reserve is an organization in Montana that was spawned by the Nature Conservancy World Wildlife Fund back in 2001. And since then, they've raised a tremendous amount of funds through large foundations. They're buying up ranches that are connected to federal leases, BLM lands, that are for cattle grazing, and they're applying to the BLM to transition them away from agricultural production to wildlife-only purposes. The goal is to create a 3.5 million acre prairie reserve in the heart of Montana, with the CMR Game Refuge being the cornerstone of that goal. They've purchased close to 300,000 acres already. They have, and they're in a process with the BLM to shift the class of livestock from cattle to bison, indigenous animals. So we've been trying to educate, equip our local county commissioners to engage in the process, the administrative process with the agencies, and with just a statutory backing and understanding their local land use plans to be able to try to kind of head this off in some regard. But the goal from their side is ultimately to transition thousands, tens of thousands of acres of productive agricultural land into passive preservation and biodiversity.
Wow, and you know, I hear this story from all over the place. It's not just even all across America, it's all over the world that this is happening. They're taking productive agricultural land out of agriculture and putting it into these trusts and these land conservation things. So what's going on in terms of the resistance? Are the locals up there organizing to fight back as all this is taking place? What's happening?
Yeah, there's several groups and local people, ranchers, that aren't really happy with what's been going on. And, you know, Bureau of Land Management, there's people in the agencies that seem to be somewhat more on the side of these conservation groups and these NGOs, and are kind of just allowing it to go along. So we've been pushing back and educating, like I said, county commissioners, local governments, because these landscape scale conservation initiatives, ultimately what they do is they blur local jurisdictional authorities or boundaries, county governments. Those lines are drawn on a map for a purpose for county governments, those political subdivisions of the state of Montana in this case, and those county commissioners have executive authority within those jurisdictions and have responsibility for the producers and the tax-paying citizenry in those jurisdictions. And when you have multinational tax-exempt foundations coming in and influencing policy and regulations on millions of acres of productive agricultural land in the state of Montana, it really isn't fair to the ranchers, the farmers that have been there for decades and working those lands, developing those lands for not only the benefit of their families and their own communities, but producing food and fiber for the American people and even exports to the rest of the world with our agricultural production in the region.
So I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, Nathan, but if you don't mind, what do you suppose is the agenda? Why do they want you guys off the land? Why are they trying to remove farmers and ranchers? And where's the food supposed to come from? What do you think's going on here?
Well, there's a lot of things at work and moving in it. And that's the problem with these NGOs, these special interest groups, is the thing about deception is that it's so deceiving. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't be deception otherwise. So they don't come necessarily and, we're going to take all this away or do this and that. They're pitching it as this is a willing seller, willing buyer situation. We're only buying ranches from those who are willing to sell to us. But the problem is, like I said, as a young producer, we're trying to take over our own family ranch. And when tax-exempt foundations place premiums on uncultivated property, that artificially raises the value of property. So the willing buyer, willing seller kind of goes out the window in the long run. It makes it difficult for other people in the region who want to buy the land for productive purposes to be able to compete with that. But the long-term goal, it's landscape scale conservation initiatives. It's shifting productive land to passive preservation and trying to create this ecological equilibrium across the northern Great Plains and bringing back the conditions that existed during the time when Lewis and Clark came up through the region. So it's really a de-development agenda because these applications with the APR, when they're buying the ranches and leasing these federal lands, in the applications, it isn't just changing the class of livestock from cattle to bison. They're asking to remove all the interior fencing. They want to remove stock water reservoirs and all these different things. But the Public Rangeland Improvement Act, Federal Land Policy Management Act, the statutory history that governs the agencies in relationship to managing those lands defines rangeland improvements as fencing, stock water reservoirs, and other mechanical means for improving the range. So you have this whole statutory history that has developed these allotment management systems over the years. And the three founding statutory bases for the Taylor Grazing Act in those districts is stabilization of the livestock industry, protection of dependent commensurate properties, and protection of the range. And that has been accomplished over the decades through those systems of improving the range through fencing, stock water reservoirs, and other mechanical means. And these non-governmental organizations are coming in and trying to dismantle what has been developed over all those years and ultimately has improved the range throughout large areas of Montana and other states as well in the West.
Yeah. Well, Nathan, thank you for sharing that with us. This is such an important topic. And again, folks out there, it's happening all over the world. It's not just the Montana ranchers and the Montana farmers that are under pressure. This is a global issue, folks. Pay attention. You heard what Christian Westbrook had to say. There's a global agenda to shut down our food production, to have the elites take total control of our food production. Folks, if you eat food, and I bet you do, you might want to take this seriously. Nathan, thank you very much for being with us. Folks, thank you for watching. The Red Pill Expo has been fantastic. Hopefully we'll see you there next year. Thanks to the whole crew here that made all this possible, IMTV and G. Edward Griffin. It's just been a wonderful time, and thanks to all of you. Please share these videos with your friends. Social media is trying to shut us down, but we got to get the word out, folks. Our freedom's on the line. Thanks again for watching. It's the Red Pill Expo, and we'll see you next year.